Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Inside Outside podcast. My name is Ron, and I will be your host, also known as Mr. Fire. I'm joined here by my co-host and friend, Ethan, also known as Whiskers. How are you doing today, Ethan?
I'm doing pretty good, Mr. Fire. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. Now, what I wanted to talk to you today is board games.
Mm-hmm.
And not just any board game. We're going to talk about Catan, which is shorthand for the Settlers of Catan. Ethan, what would you say your experience is with the Settlers of Catan?
I've had a lot of experience with the Settlers of Catan, and it's always positive.
Now, see,
the board game itself, but with friends.
I'm immediately inclined to disagree with you, only because we have played Catan together multiple times.
Yeah.
And I wanted to kind of ask you today your opinions on and feelings on it, maybe some suggestions for improvements, house rules, and just kind of talk shop on it, because I'm sure many of you out there have played this game or are interested in it, or maybe just want to know a little bit more about it. That's what we're here today, just kind of talk about it, offer some opinions, some feelings on it, some testimonies. So it is a multiplayer board game designed by Klaus Teuber, first published in 1995. In what country do you think that was published in with a name like Klaus Teuber? I'm probably butchering that name up.
If I had to guess, and the only reason I'm saying this is because I've done a little bit of homework on tabletop games, and they're really big in Germany.
Okay, well, you would be right. Ding, ding, ding. You are our winner here. Yes, it was published in 1995 in Germany as the Scheida von Catan.
Come on, use that German.
Schiedler? Die Schiedler von Catan? You know what? For all you Germans out there, I'm sorry. Anyway, can you give me a basic summary overview of Catan? What are you trying to do in it?
Yeah, so basically you're going for victory points, and the way you earn those is by building settlements, and then you can turn those settlements into cities. You have to have your settlements connected to roads, connected via roads that you build. And the whole point is that you have to place settlements, then people roll dice, and you collect resources according to the way the map has been played out. The map gets laid down randomly every time. You shuffle the squares or the tiles, and you put the tiles down, and it kind of randomizes your resources, so it's never really the same map. So it has because of that, it has a huge replayability.
And that's why I think it's appealing to a lot of people, because it's the same goal every time, and that's to get these victory points. And the players assume the role of settlers, right? Settlers of Catan. And I guess you're in this fictional world, which is Catan. And basically, you attempt to build, I guess, this empire or this kind of like foothold within this land by trading and like upgrading and settling, and you gain points from this. And then, of course, a set number of points, typically 10.
Yeah.
And then you win. And also, good to point out, this game has many expansions.
Yeah.
It is not just the base game. There's all kinds of expansions for this. Setup time, anywhere from probably 5 to 15 minutes, depending on how experienced you are with it.
Yeah.
Maybe even less if you've done it a bunch of times.
I would say the thing that takes it, the setup time honestly isn't that terrible. The thing that makes it last longer is getting out the tiles and shuffling them up.
Right.
Because everything else just gets laid down.
And that's when we're going back to this replayability aspect you're talking about. So basically, it's I guess a hex-based game, and there's 4 resources, 5, and those wood, bricks, stone, sheep, and wheat, and basically these get shuffled around, and they can be kind of placed in all these different combinations, and then you put these, I guess these little tokens on them that represent numbers of all the possible dice combinations. And each turn you roll the dice, you get that number on the token that you have a city on, like around the edges of it, and you get those victory cards. And basically, your goal from that is to build up these resource cards, and then build more stuff, get more dice rolled, build more stuff, and then just kind of snowball to where you can win the game.
Yeah, and there's a cool little randomized factor of diplomacy cards which like 90% of them are knights. I don't know if that's an accurate number, but it always seems like we only get knights, which knights are used to move a mechanic in the game called the thief. And the thief is placed or moved every time a 7 is rolled. Because the 7, you roll 2 dice, because a 7 is the most common probability, or has the most probabilities to be rolled, you essentially, the game has essentially eliminated the 7s, and that is the thief. And so every time the 7 is rolled, if any player has more than 8 cards or more, they have to lose half their cards, rounding up or down, I can't remember. Then whoever
I think
rolled
it's rounded down, and I think it's also known as the robber token.
And then whoever rolled the 7 gets to place the robber and steal a card from the person whose settlements are touching the tile.
Yeah, and you think that maybe, this adds a little bit of the kind of the randomness to it, but the 7 is the most common or the most highly probable number to get rolled on a set of 2 6-sided dice.
Right.
And so therefore you can expect it to happen a few times. I've seen it happen 3 or 4 times in a row. I've also seen it like almost never happen.
Never had like once a game.
Yeah, and then speaking of chance, I remember something I wanted to bring up is this one time we were playing Catan, and I think I invested like all of my tokens or all of my cities and settlements on like maybe 1 or 2 specific numbers, like a one of the more common ones, like a 4 or 9 or something that
9 and a 5, I think.
Right, and it's something that can get rolled a lot, and I don't think we saw like maybe one of those rolls the entire game.
I remember that game. You were so mad,
and I was so upset because it was like, all right, I got some, there's a good chance I'm going to get this roll occasionally, but that's just the thing. It's chance, right? And what if these numbers never get rolled? Yes, they have a high likelihood to, but there's also the small likelihood that they never get rolled.
Right.
And then if that's repetitively, it can be quite rage-inducing.
Yeah.
When you're building up your cities, because you can't build more cities or more settlers because you can't get the cards to build those.
Right.
And talking a little more in depth about the game, do you have any certain kind of strategies that you ever go for?
Man.
Not to kind of reveal your tactics for the next time we play each other, but for me, it's kind of always like I get kind of like a monopoly on a resource.
Right, yeah.
And the classic one is to get a monopoly on a resource and then get a port. And
yes.
Ports basically
that's probably
allow you to trade 3 or 1 of one resource for any resource card you want. Because obviously, if you're doing well and getting a lot of cards, other players may not want to trade with you if it looks like you're going to win. So you may have to trade with yourself if you get those ports. So it can be a little difficult there. So yeah, it seemed to always work for me when I could gang up on one or 2 resources and get a bunch of those and just start trading for myself or trading 2 to 1 for other people, just to be more inclined to get the cards that I need as quickly as I can.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that you, like you said, I like to do as well. It's a solid strategy, and especially having a monopoly on things makes you both hate it and want it at the same time. Because everybody wants to befriend you in this 4-player game,
right?
Unless you have an expansion that allows up to 6 people, or people want to just try and somehow put a chink in your armor and like get in on that monopoly.
Yeah, and it can be kind of difficult too if you go for that monopoly and, like I said earlier, your numbers never get rolled. And then you're just kind of, you're kind of out of luck there. And it seems like the more that I play the game with, our group of friends that we play board games with, I figure out more and more that people build in specific places and people like specific things, so you can kind of take advantage of that. But if you're playing people for the first time, it's just kind of like playing a game of Monopoly where someone's going to want to always go for Boardwalk. Someone's always going to want to go for the red spaces, and people may have certain colors or certain things that they like. So I guess to each their own on that. Now, we talked about this earlier again. Catan is not shy in expansions.
No, they are definitely not. Just looking at a couple of them, there's a Star Trek one.
A Star Trek one,
which I didn't even know was out there.
Is that an actual Catan game? What do you mean by that?
It's an official Catan game, and it's an expansion. And I think what I assume is that they just use like items from the Star Trek universe as the resources. Instead of the settlements would probably be some sort of settlements from the Star Trek Federation type of thing. So I don't know. I just happened to see it when I was looking up different expansions that they have.
Yeah.
Because the number of expansions they have are there's the Seafarers, there's the Explorers and Pirates.
Right, which was what I was more familiar with.
Right.
And I think the one of the first expansions to come out was the 5 to 6 player expansion, because originally the base game is 3 to 4 players.
Yeah.
So if you have more than 4 players, you need to get the 5 to player expansion. And I think the first official like big expansion was the Seafarers of Catan.
Mm-hmm.
And that added ships. You get across sea hexes and scenarios where you explore like archipelagos, and there's gold and trading and stuff. And then the second major expansion was Cities and Knights of Catan, which I don't think we've ever played, have we?
No, but I've heard that one's really really fun as well. The only one I have is the Explorers and Pirates.
Right. And then there was another one, which is Traders and Barbarians, which was released. And then there's anniversary editions. And then, right, the fourth large and major expansion was Explorers and Pirates.
And you got to be careful when you go to buy these, because some people think that the expansions are the smaller boxes. The smaller boxes are the 5 to 6 player expansions.
Right. So
for the expansion.
If Christmas is coming up and your parents or your girlfriend or boyfriend are like, hey, you keep talking about this Catan game, do you want me to get it for you? And you're like, yeah, give me this board game. And then you come Christmas morning, you open up your present, and it's like, oh, thanks. It's like, is it the right one? And you don't want to be rude, but you also really want to play Catan, so it's just like, well, yeah. And then you have to go shell out like another, however many dollars to get the original one. But then you have an expansion right off the bat.
There you go, right off the bat.
Yeah, and it can be a little confusing because you're right, because all the boxes look kind of similar, but they're just a little different colors with the names on it. But of course, the expansions don't include the base game. You have to get the base game and then the expansions.
Yes. So you have to have the base game. You do not have to have the base game expansion 5 to 6 players if you want to play 5 to 6 players in one of the expansions. You have to get this expansion specific 5 to 6 player expansion. So there's expansions for the expansions, and that's the thing that you got to be careful about, because that did happen to me at one point. Somebody gifted me the Pirates, or the Explorers and Pirates expansion, and they got me the 5 to 6 player expansion, not the Pirate.
And then you had to be like,
Pirates
oh, thanks.
Yeah.
We're just going to use that. You have the receipt per chance.
Yeah, right. You didn't happen to have to keep the gift receipt.
Not that I'm gonna return it. And then also I was looking up as well that there's historical scenarios.
Oh, really?
Which I didn't know. It basically allows players to reenact things from building the pyramids of Egypt or the expansion of Alexander the Great's empire using the same Catan game mechanics. There's also building the Great Wall of China, the Trojan War, Atlantis, Volcano, the Great River. It seems like there's all kinds of Catan oil springs, frenemies. There's all kinds of expansions.
Frenemies just sounds like base Catan.
Right? There's all kinds of expansions, and I'm sure there's spin-offs. And like you were talking about Star Trek, Catan Junior, Game of Thrones Catan. So there's something for everybody. And of course, not to be confused with the other hit road and city building game, Carcassonne, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with.
I'm not.
I think that's an older game, but it's very similar. And instead of you having like a set board that you build your cities and roads and stuff on, you build all that yourself. You start out with nothing; it's just a stack of tiles, and then you build out from there, and so it can end up all kind of like dominoes. So like Catan dominoes, if that makes sense. Maybe not.
It does. I played my fair share of Mexican Train.
So yeah, apparently as of 2015, more than 22 million copies in 30 languages have been sold.
Jeez, I'm not surprised. Like I said, it's a great game. It's a great family game
It's
too.
it's fairly simple to learn, right?
Yeah, there's the learning curve is very simple, but that's one of the things that all great games have. The learning curve, very simple.
Easy to get into, hard to master.
Yes, that's the uh, formula for a great game.
Easy to get into, to hard to master. Now, compared to some of the other games we play that are a little harder to get into.
Yeah. Just to bring up one that I was really excited for, I still like to play it, but it's daunting. It's daunting. Is Arkham Horror.
Arkham Horror. And for anyone not familiar, there's been a kind of a resurgence, it seems like to me, of this kind of like Arkham-esque, H.P. Lovecraft kind of.
Yeah, don't get it confused with like a Batman reference or anything. It's H.P. Lovecraft, and so it's dealing with Cthulhu and a lot of those otherworldly monsters, end of days type of thing.
Kind of like noir-esque fantasy stuff.
Right.
It's an interesting genre, and there seems to be a resurgence of like the interest in this kind of stuff because Betrayal,
Mhm.
The House on the Hill is a very popular game, and then Arkham Horror, Mansions of Madness. These are all games that have this same genre with different game mechanics, but all kind of appealing to the same genre, which is this kind of like old horror kind of combination, I guess, of like maybe the 20s or 40s,
Mhm.
combined with this horror element, and it's a lot of fun. If you don't like horror, it may not be a great game for the kids, but it's interesting to look kind of the direction that board games are heading. Because I'd say Catan, not being a relatively old game, but it certainly wasn't. It's over what 25 years now.
Yeah.
So maybe a little about 24 years. So it's not by any means an old game, but it's also not a new game when you see all these new ones they're constantly coming out with. And does it surprise you at all, kind of the overarching argument that board games are still this popular with technology?
A little bit, but at the same time, when I was growing up, I grew up in Kansas and we lived out in the country, and so
What part of Kansas? This is an important question. I'm not super
you,
familiar with Kansas, but like anything west of Kansas City, maybe like Topeka, I feel like
you realize Kansas City is on the Missouri border.
exactly. That is how.
Okay.
A little shout out to Kansas. That's just how bare a lot of Kansas is.
Okay, yeah.
Because if you live in like Wichita, you really live.
Yeah, but yeah, I lived out in the country.
Yeah.
So
In
I
the
was
sticks.
Yeah, but so
How far to the nearest Walmart? Or did you guys have a Walmart?
an hour or so?
Oof. Yeah, that's rough. Did you have like a general store?
No,
You have a grocery store?
it depends. It was there for a little bit of my childhood, and then it went away.
All right. Anyway,
But we didn't live in the town that we were near.
Right.
Like I said, we lived out in the country on a farm, and so in the summertime and the springtime, when a thunderstorm would roll through and knock out the power.
Are you trying to describe to me the plot of the Wizard of Oz? Because it sounds like where this is heading.
Oh my god, I'm gonna kill you. No,
this is a confession. If I'm not alive tomorrow,
no, we so whenever the power went out, we'd break out the candles and all sit around and play board
we
games.
break out the candles and have a good old time in the basement.
Oh.
This is not trying to make fun of you, but you're setting yourself up. Anyway, done making fun of your childhood. Keep going, please.
But yeah, we would sit around and play board games.
Right.
But the things we play would be like
this is a while. You're not a spring chicken by any means.
Oh,
Yeah,
my
so this
gosh.
was a while ago. This is before like smartphones.
yeah. This is before the internet.
Okay.
So we'd sit around and play board games like Monopoly or Sorry or
Sorry or Trouble. Did you ever play Trouble?
Yeah, we played Trouble.
Sorry and Trouble were some rage-inducing ones. Because Monopoly, it's like, yeah, you're mad, but like you don't really understand it that much as a kid.
Mhm.
But then like Sorry or Trouble, it's like you get to look in your sibling's face and be like, sorry, and you just want to give them the middle finger, but it's like
You're playing with your parents at the time.
Yeah.
But my grandparents also were a huge influence on me to play board games. They would play like types of Mexican Train, like I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And then there was this other one that my grandpa had heard about, and he actually made called Carbles.
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 Like marbles with the
Mm-hmm.
C.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So the way it worked, it was kind of like Sorry. Um, you had 4 marbles, and you had to go all the way around the board, and you had a deck of cards in the middle, and you had to get you had to get all 4 of your marbles home by playing certain cards. So the cards like a king would get you out. 3 could move you 3 backwards only. Uh, uh, then like 2 through 9 or 2 through 10 would move you that many spaces. So if you played a 2, you can move 2. Um, Things of that manner. And that was, we played games like that all the time growing up.
Right.
And so now that when I'm older, I kind of realized that there was these other games out there like Catan, Arkham,
Well,
Betrayal.
they see that they weren't always there. It's like what spawned the creation of this new genre of board
Or
games.
this new rebirth of
Yeah, maybe not a genre because the genres have been there, but like this rebirth of these really intense mechanical games. I'm sure they've always existed since. I like to kind of compare it with role playing in Dungeons and Dragons and
Yeah.
such because
there has been like a big rebirth of Dungeons and Dragons, and I think that is because people are kind of looking at that vintage, that nostalgia effect.
and I think a big part of it is because back in the day, maybe you were a nerd if you were in the board games if you weren't playing them
Right.
with your family.
Yeah.
Like even then though, I gotta sit at home on the weekend on a Friday or Saturday night and play board games with my family instead of going out and partying or drinking with your friends or something. I was the kind of kid who kind of enjoyed playing board games with my family, even if it wasn't like the funnest time. I love card games and board games because of those
Right. Yeah.
growing up with my family playing them. And now that I'm older, and I think maybe a lot of millennials are like this, is they were born and raised to play those board games, and now they're older and they have kids of their own. They're like, I
Right.
want to let's do this now, and instead of playing just the classics, let's design and play and have some new fun games that
And
get
see,
really
that's one of the
get
things.
really technical, really mechanical, all these rules, and then you have games like Catan that's like perfect, and there's so many board games now. It seems like
Right. Yeah.
there's great board games coming out just like every second.
Yeah. There's Small World. There's Azul.
Dominion, which
Yeah.
has existed for a while, but it's just a lot of these crazy games that have just such good artwork and such good creativity and imagination that go into them, and you have so much replayability, and it seems like you can't even begin to imagine them all when maybe like 30 or 40 years ago all you had was like Monopoly and Battleship.
Right. Exactly. And see, I think that's one of the things. Like my age group, like you said, I'm not exactly a spring chicken, but like we grew up playing board games. Now we're getting older, and we're kind of wanting that nostalgic effect of sitting around and playing with our friends. My parents would sit around and they would go to parties and play cards.
Yes,
Like a game
in
called-
cards because maybe it's always been associated with gambling,
Yeah.
so that's maybe be seen as an adult thing.
Yeah.
Um,
And so they would always go to, like, I remember several New Year's Eve parties where we would go and play a game called Boob Bridge at, somebody's house, and there'd be like 16 people there.
And now I feel like people that were your parents' age now go to a New Year's Eve party and will play like Catan,
Yeah.
or like maybe a really popular card game now is Secret Hitler,
Oh, yeah.
or the ever popular Werewolf, or any variants of Werewolf, or such games like that, where these easy party games where you draw cards and people assume roles and have a good time. There's secrecy and lies involved. And back to one of my points, I think a lot of it is because it's cool to play board games now. It's
Yeah, it
cool.
really is.
It's cool to be a nerd.
I mean, look at like all the Stranger Things came out, and the
And-
kids are playing D&D.
And
Harmon Quest came out.
Stranger Things has done so much
Yeah.
for the youth, in that whether it's a good thing or not that these kids are getting into it because of pop culture, it's beside the point that kids are getting into it and having a great
Yeah.
time with it. And I think that's great for D&D and role players and nerds and gamers in general, because you get these celebrities and these stars, and your parents are like, what is this Dungeons and Dragons stuff? And you show them Stranger Things and they can relate to you.
Right.
And that's supposed to be a spoof on the 70s and 80s.
One of the things that I think is actually really pushing this rebirth of board games is actually video games.
Right.
And if you look at video games more and more and more, in order to play with a friend, you have to have the controller. Most Xbox and PlayStation support only 4. Wii is really the only one where you can play with more than 4, but it's on certain games, not on every game. And for instance, like Melee, or excuse me, Smash.
Smash, like Super Smash Brothers.
Super Smash
a very
Brothers.
popular party game.
Right.
And just to play with your friends.
The problem is, if you play with your friends, let's say you have 8 people over, you might have a friend who doesn't play Super Smash Brothers and never did. And he's over here getting his butt whooped.
Well, that was the fun as a kid, right? Is like you
Right.
you invite friends over to your house and you kick their ass in the games to make you feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
So,
But that's the problem nowadays, is that you still want to go over, you still want to play those games. And I think video games have created this leisure time where people can just game all the time. And they want to be able to do that in a place where there's equal footing. And so board games where, yes, you do have that, this is my game and I know how to play it.
That's an incredibly good point, because people love multiplayer games now, and you're going to go online and play against these people, but you're going for the competitive aspect. But if you want to do it with your friends or your family, it's like, how do you get them into that? No, you're not going to try and show someone who's never played a video game or done that before to operate a double analog controller.
Yeah, using 2 thumbs.
Two thumbsticks
at the same time. It's not exactly easy for some people.
And that may be fun and stuff. You can get them into that. But you're right. If you ever have a situation where you have a bunch of people or more than 2 or 3, you can jump right into a game of Catan or Secret Hitler really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the main point would be here is that you have friends
Yeah, right.
that you have enough people to play these games with. I guess we're lucky ourselves because we've kind of built up a little group that we constantly have over and
right.
play
but
these,
even
try out
look
these
at
games with. And such.
even look at Hollywood. There was a really successful movie recently called Game Night, and they played things like the older games.
Did you see Game Night?
I did see
I
Game
didn't
Night.
See, I didn't see it.
Oh, I loved it. Because I saw our friend group in that. And you got to go watch it.
Uh-huh.
You got to go watch it.
Yeah, you see like the archetypes, like everyone has that person in their group.
Yeah.
And if we're going off of Hollywood again, I think some big ones in general that had making a nerd be cool again is Wreck-It Ralph.
Mm-hmm.
That was targeted for kids.
And again, it played off of the 80s arcades.
Yes.
So you're going for the nostalgia.
A great book that I don't know if you've read or seen the movie, but Ready Player One.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very popular.
Yeah. We recently watched that one.
I read the book. I haven't seen the movie. Ender's Game.
Yeah, that's a great one.
These ones that kind of, there's always been sci-fi, but like they've never been popular. I feel like to the entire masses. It maybe started out back in the day with Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and recently with our generation, Harry Potter,
Mm-hmm.
where there's this kind of like cultural built up around these nerdy and kind of fantasy realms. But now it seems like it's just common knowledge that people like that stuff.
Yeah.
And it maybe wasn't that way 10 or 15 years ago.
Like I mentioned in the last podcast, in Borderlands 2, there's an Easter egg that takes you into Frodo Baggins and Samwise Gamgee of playing the role of taking the ring all the way across the entire map, like through I don't know what you call them, travel sections, like where you have to go from one map to the next map.
Right. I don't know what you call this either. But basically
Like
what he's referring to is in our pilot episode, the episode before this, if things work out, and how we release them.
Yeah, right.
Is we were talking about Borderlands 2 and about this Easter egg, where it was a throwback to the Lord of the Rings trilogy, where you find this ring that you have to take through the entire game, without using any vehicles or any fast traveling, and then you throw it into this big volcano.
After a guy named Craig attacks you, steals it from you, and then jumps into the volcano.
Yeah.
So, fortunately, you don't lose a middle finger.
If you've never played Borderlands 2 or never heard of that Easter egg, give it a try, or listen to that podcast because we go in depth about the game and getting ready for Borderlands 3. It's amazing. But yeah, board games, man, it's incredible that I if I ever have kids one day, or if I ever am in a situation where I'm influencing a younger audience and they're going to be talking to me about like, oh, did you play this newest board game or this newest like fantasy D&D? Like we have 5th edition right now.
Right.
But
I'm a huge fan of 3.5 just because there's so much I could do, but 5th edition is really streamlined for the masses.
And it's like if I see someone younger, like much younger than me, talking about all this stuff and how cool it is, I'm be like halfway like blown back and halfway like, am I losing? Is this an adult thing now? Like where it's, oh, you adults aren't into D&D and stuff. It's like, oh no, this was my generation, buddy.
Yeah, right.
Like we got this started back in the way olden days,
Right.
with like first edition and stuff. So it's crazy to see all these things give ode to all these references, and then the kids enjoy it and build their own cultures upon it. Like with Ready Player One and Wreck-It Ralph and Stranger Things, we're like, oh, look how cool this retro stuff is. And Jumanji and just to mention another Hollywood movie, and let's build upon that and have our own cultures out of it. And I think
just to insert right quick, me and my friends love Jumanji. Like I said, we were huge into the board games because it was pre-internet. I mean, we had lots of video game consoles, but when the Jumanji game came out,
right,
super disappointed.
Yeah. See, I never played it. I think I played the board. I definitely played the board game. I think my grandma had it. But yeah, it's crazy, right? That now something I was gonna mention is like the kids have built their own culture, like the younger generation. I don't know what you call them, after millennials, whenever that cutoff is, but kids of like the early 2000s, like people born after
Generation Y or something,
like people born after 1999 or born after the year 2000.
Yeah.
They have, the biggest one now is Fortnite.
Yeah.
And at first my opinion on that was that, oh, gross, these kids flossing and doing all this weird dancing and stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is so weird and this is so stupid. And then I look upon it and like, that's exactly how we were. Like,
yeah, I bet you were running around after Smash came out going, fuck 'em punch!
Oh, yeah, doing all this nerdy shit like Hadoukening in school. And yeah, charging up and going Super Saiyan for my classmates and trading Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards. And it's like, can we really make fun of their culture? No.
They're doing exactly what
I
we
think
did.
that's hypocritical. It's hypocritical as fuck. And I'm not afraid to say it, that I may not agree with Fortnite and the whole battle royale genre, mostly because I'm really bad at it. I'm never gonna get that chicken dinner, but it's like they're having fun, and if they're having fun and it's good for them, then hell yeah, I support it, and I can't wait to look forward to what comes next, specifically in the role playing genre, with what the next generation is going to come up with and how they're going to interpret it, because you never know, because we're getting new and amazing stuff all the time. So hopefully it keeps going up and we stay away from microtransactions and loot boxes, but.
That's another reason why I think people like the board games, is you buy the game, and other than buying the expansions or something, like we talked about buying all the expansions for Catan, but you have the game,
right?
And even for something like D&D or even Monsters Mansions of Madness, which our friend has, you can buy the DLCs and then it comes, or not the DLCs,
the expansions.
You can buy the expansions and they come with other monsters, but all of these monsters are figurines that are paintable. They're already primed and ready to go, just like in D&D. And so you can make the skin whatever you want.
And specifically, like, I think it just depends on the imagination of who you are, because some people want to be told what to do and how to do it in a game. They want it to be railroaded. They're comfortable with that. And then some people, they just want a rule book and being like, all right, these are your whatever rules. Like, they get the core rules from D&D and they're like, all right, here's how things should work, maybe.
Yes.
Because of homebrew. And then
that's why I love D&D.
Build and create a story, go crazy. And then for those friends, and those are the GMs of the world, the game masters. And then for those friends who want it to be railroaded, they find a GM or DM and they're like, hey, railroad me on this adventure and let's have fun.
Yeah.
Which always isn't the best, but we can get into that in a different episode about Dungeons and Dragons. But yeah, like I said, I can't wait to look forward to what comes next in the board game world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm excited about it. Like I said, it's definitely reborn.
Well, Ethan, we've gone over about 30 minutes here. It's been nice talking to you, and I hope you all have enjoyed listening to us rambling today about Catan and a few other board game related things. But this has been the Inside Outside podcast. Again, I am Ron, joined here by Ethan. Signing off, and have a good time.